Welcome to the Froth Cast. Today we have a very, very special guest, Tiago Saca Pires. When you beat Kelly in Bali.
What magic, huh?
When I want to show a clip about Portugal, I would show your video.
A really good barrel, and everybody start, who's this guy? We say, let's paddle there and let's surf it today. Whoever gets the best wave out there, the best barrel, gets to name the wave. I think called it sub cave or whatever, and then Grego said, let's leave it cave.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Froth Cast. We're in episode 3. We finally found out a name. And today we have a very, very special guest. We have the Portuguese tiger, the surfer that brought Portugal on the map, the first surfer to ever qualify on the world tour, the Portuguese surfer that has most won titles in the QS and has been on the tour for a very, very long time. A big inspiration for me, Tiago Saca Pires. I mean, I grew up watching you compete, and you know, when I wanted to be a professional surfer, there was only one person to look up to, and it was you, Tiago. I mean, your career has been incredible, what you've done for Portuguese surfing, the way you open up the gates for us to aspire to have an international career. And yeah, I mean, I'm so happy to have you here with us today to tell us a little bit about your life, your career, and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where we are, but thank you, Nick. Thank you for the invite. It's special to be here too, because nowadays you're such a channel. You know, you just channel so many things, and you know, you bring so much value to Portugal. So it's funny to me to be here, kind of like, in a way, hearing you that I'm the inspiration, but nowadays you are the guy that is inspiring all the kids. So well done, you know, and so much respect for what you're doing. But yeah, it's been a journey, huh? It's been a journey. I remember you so young, such a grom, such a frenetic little grom, surfing around me, and you know, we never know. We would be here today. Huh? It's
pretty funny. I mean, the first memory I have of you, obviously, you know, I mean, you were the person to look up to, as I said before. You know, like, I mean, there was always only one name. My first winner as a professional surfer, I was just so excited about surfing. I was one of those kids that you see on the beach these days, you know, running around their idols, like, you know, wanting autographs and stuff like that. And you were the guy I was always chasing, you know, and not only me, everyone, right? I mean, you were such a mark. But there's a very, very special moment where I'm driving for Praia Grande on a winter day. It's absolutely raining, and I'm just so passionate about surfing. And I'm sitting in the car with João Macedo. We have this like shitty little Fiat Punto, you know, driving in the rain, super cold. And and the story that morning was, man, you know, Tiago just finished up second place at the Sunset Contest, you know, and that was like the big thing, you know, like it was. For us Portuguese surfers at the time, it was like, wow, you know, like a Portuguese surfer on the podium, you know, against guys like Andy Irons and stuff like that. And that really marked me. Like, that was like a vision for like, shit, man, you know, like one of ours is actually, you know, facing the best in the world, you know? I mean, tell us about that moment. That was a very special moment for you, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, it was kind of like my breakthrough moment, you know why? And I had done a few results on the high SA World Juniors before, but those contests weren't really taken so seriously. You know, you had to prove yourself on the ASP field, nowadays WSL field. So that was that winter, actually, the winter of 2000, 24 years ago, crazy enough.
Insane.
It was a special winter for me because it was my first year on tour. You know, doing the whole QS adventure with my coach, and also back during those years, it was sort of like the second of the 30 of the Pro Junior European Tour, which was pretty big for us. You know, it was sort of like a really professional European Junior Tour, and whoever won that tour was kind of like the guy in Europe. I had won the year before in '99. And also is where you get a spot to surf the World Juniors, like you still do today. But on the year 2000, because I was away most of the year competing on the QS, I ended up not competing on our junior tour, but I really wanted to surf the last event, the World Juniors. So I submitted the wildcard. I actually won the contest, the only one I did in Ribeiradilhas, a junior. And then they gave me a wildcard to go and compete on the World Juniors, which I almost won as well. So
against Pedro Henrique, right?
it was a nice contest in Macaja. I felt I was surfing Ribeiradilhas again, you know, but with a bit more backwash. So it was so easy to me. But yeah, that started my Hawaiian campaign that year, you know, and then I had a decent Haleiwa event. I think I finished 9th or 13th or something like this. And then I went to the just a little note before, I had also won my very first QS event. It was in Portugal at 3-star in Vila Nova de Gaia. So it was a big thing for me back then, and for, you know, it was the first time a Portuguese actually won a QS event, and that happened like in September. It was a pretty stacked end of the year for me because I won that event in September. I got a wild card for Mundaka CT, and then and then I did that Pro Junior that I won. I got the wild card to go to Hawaii, compete on the World Juniors. So made that final. And then the year ended before sunset. I knew I had an okay year, but I was probably like 50 on the ranking or something. I had a slight chance of qualifying on my very first year, and I needed a win at sunset. So, you know, the contest starts, and I've never really thought that I could get close to win or to a result, because sunset, it's a complicated wave. You never know what's going to happen to you. So the event starts, and I think I was in that momentum. You know, I made the final at Macaja, and then Haleiwa, I did a few heats, few rounds. The contest starts. It was massive, like 15 foot, you know, and I managed to kind of like play my game well on that, you know, one of those big sunset days. It's so hard. You never know where you're going to sit. But for some reason, I did like big height scores from the beginning, and I start winning heats and making rounds. And then the contest, and then the waves got really perfect. You know, it was one of those events that was trades the whole event. It went from 15 to 6 foot to the last day where it was like, you know, I'd say 8 to 12 or 10 foot Hawaiian, solid, perfect. And I was just living it and enjoying it, you know, heat by heat, not really thinking about, about a qualification, because I needed there was Handy, there was Sunny, there was so many CT surfers and so much better surfers than me. But eventually, you know, I think there was a breakthrough moment on like a quarterfinal or whatever, that I make a really good barrel, and everybody start, who's this guy? And then I have that epic semi-final where I also do a very good barrel, and I almost did a 10, but like squeezing out of the barrel, the lip just landed on my back. And then I made a final, and then I was in the final with Sunset, with Sunny, with Andy and Zane Harrison, who, for the guys who don't know him, it was an Australian, very good young talent that won the contest the year before.
Jesus.
So he had won. So the stacked final, you know, there was Zane Harrison, that he was a defending champion, Andy Irons, who was just, you know, handy, and then Sunny, the year he was world champ. You know, the year he was winning everything on the CT.
Jesus.
So there I was, a little kid, you know, who's this guy, you know, and suddenly I almost, you know, because I was so in the rhythm, and for some reason, sunset is a wave that kind of, I don't know, I think coming from Portugal, you learn how to surf waves like sunset a bit. You know, you're used to moving around these lineups and, you know, fading, and especially me coming from Ericeira, I was used to surf waves with the speed of sunset. You know, I had a hard time adjusting to other waves on tour, but sunset is that kind of wave that has the speed like same as home. So the final was there, you know, as super like crazy moment for me as a youngster. You know, I was just 20 years old, and almost won it. You know, there's people that still say that if he wasn't like, Sunny was getting super high score that year, you know, because it was the year they chose him to be world champ. So, but you can never confront a guy like Sunny. So I got second after in front of Andy and Zane, and if I had won, I would have qualified. I finished second. I moved up to 27th in the ranking, which was a huge bump, but still didn't qualify. It was that close that first year.
Jesus. I mean, that was absolutely legendary stuff back then. Obviously for you, I mean, that was the start of your career.
Yeah, and I was the rookie of the Triple Crown as well. Because
Jesus,
I did a good Triple Crown.
I mean, that was
ended up surfing Pipeline too, which I surfed the trials at Pipe. They didn't give me a spot straight away, but I made a few rounds, and I think I got fifth on the semifinal. Sorry, I was just
no. I mean, that's legendary stuff. You know, coming into Hawaii, which was the proving grounds at the time, such an important point. I mean, in my career, I was always told that if you want to prove yourself, if you want to show the world that you're one of the best, you got to prove yourself in Hawaii. And I mean, for you going to Hawaii at Sunset and finishing up second place on your first year on tour against Andy, Sonny, and almost winning an event, I mean, that had a huge impact in Portugal, but also in international surfing, right? I mean,
I used to say, for me, Hawaii is where you graduate, you know. If you don't do well in Hawaii, if you don't make yourself seen or noticed in Hawaii, you'll never graduate in pro surfing. You know, Hawaii is the university. You know, is where you get the master's degree, where you get everything. You know, you learn so much from, not just from technically wise speaking, but just like how the surf world works. You know, there's so many. I don't know. There's so many inputs and so much information that you learn in Hawaii that you will never learn that kind of stuff anywhere else in the world. You know, Hawaii is the big stage of surfing, and it pisses me off. Like when WSL shifted the end of the world champion decision to Trussels, because I think Hawaii is the gladiators arena, is where you need to prove yourself. So a world champ didn't do good in Hawaii. You know, it's like I wouldn't say a fake world champ, but it doesn't,
Yeah, and it's
not
also
the complete package.
It's also not the culture of surfing. You know, like I mean, the title has been defended for the last 20 years plus in Hawaii, maybe even 30 years, right? I mean,
30 years, I'd say.
Yeah, a surfer needs to be complete. You know, you go through the whole year and you prove yourself in Hawaii. That's where the biggest showdowns in surfing have happened over the years. You know, with Kelly, Andy at Pipelines.
Part of our culture. You know, you can't just mesmerize culture like that. You know, and I think culture of surfing is Hawaii, and you can't ignore it. It's like we don't have a Masters, like tennis, where you have the Grand Slams. We don't have that. So what we have is an amazing sport that goes through surface around the world, surfing the best waves in the world, the heaviest, the longest. The dream tour needs to be, happening in these spots, and then part of our sport is finishing in Hawaii, and that's where surfing started almost, and that's where people have been proving and getting beatings, throughout decades, and it's part of our culture. I mean, we can't just ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, before we move into the next part, I mean, how was Portuguese surfing back then? I mean, this was really like a breakthrough the first international breakthrough performance for a Portuguese surfer on an international stage. What was it like back then? Like, I mean, was this something you were expecting? Like, were you building up to that? Did you know that, did people around you believe that moment for you was going to come? Like, how was it? How was surfing back then in Portugal?
Man, it was just on the turning. Europe, even in Europe back then, during that time, Europe was just the beginning of the European Union. I mean, everything was changing and revolving, and just a few years before that, like 98 maybe, we still had boundaries, borders to go to Spain, to France. You change currency. It was right after that. So, and surfers were super like competitive and mean. We didn't go along very well in Europe. There was, of course, you have separated countries. You still have like different mentalities these days, different cultures, but everything is so much more open nowadays. You don't even think about it. But I was coming from my teenage years. I was competing on our EPSA tour, which was European Professional Tour, where I was just a Grom, and it was a huge rivalry between Spanish surfers, Portuguese surfers, French surfers, who were always being the best ones and the most advanced ones in terms of results, on the international scene. And then a few English guys, really strong guys like Russell Winter, Karen Williams, and Spencer Hargraves. But so it wasn't like no one was really expecting me to go so high so quick, and even myself, I'd say. But yeah, it was a moment where, like, this fresh moment where everything is a bit more connected. Everybody was a bit more supportive as well. Like European surfers, we were starting to hang out all together for the first time.
Which was the start of the Euroforce, right?
Right then in Hawaii, I had a huge support from Patrick, from Mickey, that I didn't have before. We were traveling kind of like separate. Actually, my first year on tour, I started traveling with Mickey and Patrick a bit because we were coming from these EPSA tours where we were divided. But then we understood that when we were away, we saw the Hawaiians hanging out together. We saw the Brazilians all together. We saw Australians all together. They had these little unions with names and funny names, and they hang out because it's a lonely thing, when you're traveling by yourself during the tour. It's a shit show, So you need company. You need someone to share something, to laugh, So because there wasn't enough contingency of each country in Europe, we started, after Hawaii, and especially after that first year, we understood that we were stronger together, and we could create like a vibe together with, an Equacero, Eric Ribier, Patrick, Mickey. Later on, it would be like Jeremy and Michelle. So we understood that we were stronger together, and then started hanging out and discussing a bit more about hanging out together and kind of like matching the other continents. And that's the beginning of the Euroforce. That's when I started competing as well. And to see the unity of European surfers fighting for each other and understanding that together people are stronger, European surfers against the world, and that was also a time where European surfing flourished the most, Mickey was on tour, Jeremy was on tour, Patrick was winning a bunch of events on an international level. I feel like, you guys were doing projects together, with Daz and stuff like that. And it was a beautiful also time for European surfing in terms of industry, right? The industry was absolutely booming. But how was a Portuguese surfer scene back in the day? Because I feel like these days, a Portuguese surfer is recognized. I remember my early days going to Hawaii. A Portuguese surfer wasn't very recognized in terms of accessibility, no one would give you an inch, no one would lend you a board. Photographers weren't really helping you out, sending you photos and this and that. I don't know, that has completely changed these days. How was it back in the day, like when you said, okay, I come from Portugal, did people give you credit for it? Or how did it, was it just... Portugal was seen as an old country, old and rusty country. The few CT events that were happening here were all on the wrong timing, I wouldn't say wrong places, but like doing by the wrong people. The vibe, it was completely different than the vibe of nowadays, of today, where you have the right people doing the right projects, and things are flowing because there's a sense of, in a way, culture, in another way, sense of building something. And back then, I think people were organizing CTs just to make money. Yeah. It was João Lags, the guy that organized these tennis events. The surfers were coming here. They didn't feel like welcomed and respected. And it just felt...
And there wasn't many pretty girls
like
around.
Meat,
That's what they say. A lot of people used to say that Portugal, when you come to Portugal, you're going to see the girls with beards and hairy skin. That has changed. That has changed.
And armpits. Yeah, and I think they'd say that because the Portuguese girl was so Catholic and so hard to get,
Yeah.
They had to come up with excuses.
Exactly.
But definitely a different vibe. In the contests, you had fair few people watching, but it wasn't these massive crowds like today. But the thing is, the surf, I often in events was called Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican.
Because they didn't even think of Portugal as a country, as a destination of, with good waves, with surf culture. So I was a lot of times I was misspelled by a Puerto Rican, and that made me, in a way, mad. But in another way, I think one of my biggest arms, tools, or strengths was my psychological underdog mode that I had, because I was competing. In the first few years, I was competing with guys that were always on magazines, always on movies. I used to consume their movies, and then suddenly I'm with this guy on the heat, and no one knows me, and everybody's talking about how good of a surfer he is, and that underdog energy fed me for a long time, So, and I was coming from a country where people didn't respect, so it was a good match for me. Even if you were French, people would recognize you because they would go to French. There's all this French
glamour, Paris,
and the
wine,
girls and topless, and everybody would talk about French and French surfers and Hossegor. Spanish was a little different, but they had Mundaka, and it was really recognized already as one of the best waves in the world. And Portugal was just nothing. It was just, old and rusty country.
It's crazy how that has changed in the last 15 years, right? I mean, from coming from your generation where Portugal was not a recognized country for surfing, not a desired country for surfers, and how it's the most desired country in Europe for surfing these days. Oh. Spilled coffee.
On your couch. In my... But
it's crazy how it's changed so much in the last 10 years, how we are the country with the most events, with the most QS events, how we have Nazaré, how we have you I think I'm an old rock already in this construction, but I'm probably on the base of the pyramid. But then it comes... You need to have strong pillars to build a solid house, man.
It's true. And it's why, Portugal has been on the high wave, riding the high wave, whatever you want to call it, sneezy names, but we haven't stopped. That's very solid. And nowadays in Europe we are the case study country. They are trying to understand how we work and how we're doing things. Talking about France, they have way more money than us, but they can't captivate enough interest from the partners to do things, and I think it's a construction of rocks, like you say, that made us really special, and you know what, like the variety of our quality was never well communicated, never well seen, and then when you really look into it, we have such a special corner, and so much different beauty, in this country that people go nuts, And this, we are such a special package.
Yeah, I think it was really a mixture of different rocks, as you said, like important people. I think that you are a fundamental part of this evolution. I see you as the gatekeeper, the gate opener, through your results on an international level that really spiked the interest of, Portuguese brands, the government, the tourism to look at Portugal. I think, opening that gate was essential, and then having key people involved like Spindler, for instance, Francisco Rodrigues, Nazaré, Garrett as well, obviously, and then having that next generation of Kikas, Vasco, myself, everyone in different angles that were able to push, surfing and Portugal. And then obviously the internet also played a huge role into Portugal. I felt like back in the day, it was the obvious, there was Paris, there was London, there was this and that. I feel like the internet revolution of actually seeing a picture online and seeing the beauty, the undiscovered beauty of Lisbon, for instance, Nazaré has really taken, and then obviously the government support of the tourism board, really having a big backing. I know that you were supported by the tourism board at some point of your career as well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like everything, all the pieces came into place to build this perfect castle in some way that is called Portugal these days. And it's quite amazing to see how the whole world is
It's our 21st century castle.
No, it is crazy. It is
we
crazy.
Have old castles, and now we have this 21st century castle, which is our image, pretty much. We're not the old country anymore. We have in the last 6, 7, 8 years, the amount of tech people, the amount of tech industry and people that came to Lisbon, to Portugal, and that discovered this corner of the world, and then a lot of them stayed here and started doing projects here, helping out, like you say, building a different and new country, and more modern country. It's been helping a lot too, I see the difference not only on the surf scene, but next to the surf scene, there's the whole economics, of the country that, plus the new wave of expats, coming to live in Portugal, because these X factors just happen around the world. It's a big coincidence as well, but just came in the perfect timing to create a lot of opportunities and a huge field where you can invest and live.
I mean, one of the hottest topics right now is obviously there's a lot of hate in Portugal towards foreigners moving to Portugal, and the housing crisis. Yeah. There not being any houses. I get a lot of heat myself for promoting Portugal. For promoting the coastline, for promoting surfing. You can't even imagine how much heat I get, how many hate messages.
I believe.
But it's like, for me, it's very natural, because I come from a generation in Portugal where Portugal was nothing. I used to travel the world talking about Portugal, and people would ask if it's Puerto Rico or Brazil,
Yeah.
I used to go run into Lisbon and see broken families, a completely destroyed city, no places to go to, no economic when it comes down.
Vibe, no. The machine wasn't really moving,
And it's beautiful to
the ball wasn't rolling.
Exactly. And in some way, I feel like that. Obviously, like there's more people. The housing crisis in Portugal is a real issue. There is. Rents have skyrocketed over the last couple of years, but that's just that's the growing pain of the evolution of the country. Sure. You understand? Sure. I feel like there is more tourism, more opportunities. Anywhere you go, there's a vibe. There's opportunities, and people really forget that. There's obviously the negative side, but also there's a very positive side, and there's all of us are profiting in some way or another through this. So.
I agree. I think one of the biggest pains as well is our own organization, our own political structure, and the scams and the scandals that you hear about, within our core organization, core, that also make people feel that they are
been cheated on,
been cheating on it, and also like pushed away because they cannot compete with a person from their equivalent social class from another country in Europe, because there's a huge difference. We pay more taxes, and we get smaller wages, lower wages. So how do you compete? And I think it's probably I'd see that's even the biggest issue than people. Not wanting foreigners moving in, because there's no doubt that they're bringing a lot of opportunities, and I'm totally with you. I think it was just a question of when it was going to happen, because the world got completely different. It's a global world. With internet, with even after coronavirus, we got so much more people moving here. And appreciating what we have, and really crediting it and appreciating it, and kind of like, I love these foreigners because sometimes they look at, for example, they look at Costa da Caparica or Fonte Telha and they see beauty in there. And while a Portuguese person is like just saying it's shit, it looks like shit, blah, 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 just negative, and the foreigner comes and say, fuck, this is beautiful. Look at this coast. Look at this ocean. It's just right here in Lisbon. So they see it with a different angle. And that's very important because we need to value what we have. Otherwise, this is just a block of land in Europe that's,
Something that's very positive is also, the people that are moving into Portugal, they're respecting the Portuguese culture. They appreciate the Portuguese culture. They appreciate the Portuguese people, and they want to be involved with Portuguese people. You understand?
Yeah.
They're not pushing the culture aside and making their own path. They want to really engage with the Portuguese people, and that's how you make a society grow in general. Opportunities coming into the people's homes.
But made people pissed more was the government giving a lot of help for foreigners to come without paying taxes and stuff. Well, we have a huge amount of taxes to pay, and we don't get the salaries. That measurement of the government, to attract foreigners, it was good in the beginning, but then they didn't really change it or didn't really adapt it. So it's still open to these days. A foreigner comes here and makes it, it opens a business. He has way less taxes to pay than me.
For sure.
And that kind of makes people mad every day still.
For sure.
But, it's undeniable that, you have to mingle.
Yeah.
You go to New York. What's New York? There's no Americans in New York. It's a
mingle.
It's a mingle of classes.
A melting pot. Yeah.
And countries. And that's where you get people to do big things, because you're mixing different cultures and stuff. And Portugal is starting to live this sort of environment, and it's creating a lot of value. So we cannot afford to stop this, I think. And people just need to. It's like internet, you hate it, but then you go there and you see how easy it is to do things, and then we still hate it. But it's going.
It's a love-hate
Either
relationship.
You catch the train or you hide yourself in the cave.
I know you're a great politician. I know you're a great businessman. We're going to talk about that.
Politician,
but you have you're an incredible ambassador of the sport. Incredible. The surfing wouldn't be as far it is right now if it wasn't for you. We've touched on that. But before we go into your next phase of your life, I really want to talk about those, this QS years. How was life on the QS? Tell us about, how was it getting on the QS? Tell us about your best and worst moments.
Pain, a lot of pain and a lot of fun, because it took me 7 years to qualify, which was an eternity.
After that first year where you almost qualified.
First year, it's funny because most of the people don't know this, because I ended up the year 2000 with the second place at Sunset, and I start the year 2001. My first ever event, I would go to Brazil, to Floripa, and I make a final. I think I got fourth in the final, but
final
competing in Brazil is
tough.
It's tough. And back then you had all the city guys from Brazil, doing these 4 stars in Joaquina. So I end up 1 year with the final in Hawaii, and then I start next year with a final in Brazil. What do you think?
It's on.
It's on. This is going to be a walk in the park. So, but there was also something that happened, which I started dating.
Okay.
And then my coach said, he knows this, and he actually admits it and tells it out loud. When you let an influential person into your life, and the energy changes, everything changed. So it was that, like it was my first contest, the beginning of a relationship, and then for some reason I was really in love and this and that, and I start looking towards another direction a bit, and then the year just went, to garbage. I think I finished 64th in the ranking from 27th. That was my next chapter, and then I was with that person for 2-3 years, and it was hard. I I still had some results. I won in Japan in the next year, 2002. I won a 5-star in Japan. Another crazy, year forced more and more together, and then no one really thought that I could win in Japan. Coming from Ericeira, I had just started the year before doing some boards with Ricardo Martins from Brazil. That was an idea of Zé, because I was still riding cement back then from Nic, and I with all the respect that Nic deserves from me, and he knows it, I wasn't going in fast enough in small conditions, but I was so stubborn that I was like, keep going, keep fighting with cement. And then I tried Ricardo Martins swallowtail, a bit more like of a fish board.
Board, yeah. Specialist in those
and
conditions.
The things, they were flying, Yeah. So I won Japan. And that's third year of me, and on the QS was another year where I finished 27th, and I got really close. But then I had an injury surfing at home in Cochos. I broke my tailbone on the barrel. I just smashed my ass on the reef.
Jesus.
Which I lost a few events in the end of the back end of the leg. Some 6 stars in Brazil. I didn't go, so I went to Hawaii like desperately trying to qualify, but it didn't happen. So I finished the year 2000, 27th in the ranking, the year 2001 in 64, the year 2002 in 27 again, the year 2003 in 27 again.
Jesus.
So there was like 4 or 5 years already. And then year 2005, I won the QS in Ericeira, 6-star. I finished 19th. Back then we were qualifying 16 guys. Right? And then there was 2 double qualifiers. So I finished 1 spot, and it was the most heartbreaking year of my life. And then after that year, I was kind of like mentally shooked. Like I saw Mickey became back in that moment already my best buddy. And that year he qualified, and we were really good because I got to Hawaii qualified, and then at the last few events I was knocked out. So that year, 2005, my father passed away as well in April. I won Ericeira. It was like the biggest. I don't know if you were.
I remember.
You weren't there?
I was there. Yeah, of course I was there.
You were there. It was very special because the waves are small, but.
There was one year you finished in second against Pedro Henrique, right? Or
no? I beat Pedro Henrique in the final.
Okay. Which one was the one? Was it 2005 where you won the big one, the big event?
Yeah, 2005 and 6.
Okay.
Pedro Henrique only beat me in Macaja that juniors in the World Juniors in 2000.
Wow.
And Pedro Henrique was actually, he qualified that year, or he was already on tour when we surfed that final at Ribara. So that year was 2005 in my life was a heavy year for me mentally because, after winning Ribara, I jumped to 10th in the ranking or whatever. Mickey's like 7th, and we're like the buddies, we're qualifying together. And then we got to Hawaii. I actually went to Brazil and got the quarterfinals in the 6-star. So even bumped to higher.
And you thought you were going to go to Hawaii, and you thought you were going to win.
I lost first round, and then sunset first round, and I was out.
Especially after being so good in Hawaii in the past, you thought it was going to be a no-brainer.
Always. And I took my mom, Mickey took his family, everybody was, hanging together.
So let me tell you my perspective. I mean, the Portuguese community felt those losses like we were on your own skin, there was 2 years where you almost qualified, you finished up, there was 1 spot away from qualifying in a couple
of... Was that a year?
That 1 year, but wasn't there 2 years in a row or something that we were close?
The thing was like, I was 1 heat away of qualifying a lot of times.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? I mean, there's been a couple of years, there's so much expectation. You started off with sunset, almost qualifying. 4 years down the road, you hadn't qualified yet, and that year you were 1 spot away from qualifying. You put everything on the line, like you thought you were going to qualify and then you didn't. Like, how do you deal with that? Because it was
tough mentally. Yeah, it was really tough. And then, but I was so committed to my project. Me and Zé, we were such a good team together. It was also the emancipation of Portuguese surfing, and we had a few guys coming over. Sometimes Grego did 1 event or 2, Ruben did 1 event or 2, but no one was really doing the whole tour. So it was just pretty much me, myself and Zé as my coach. And we had this huge dream, you know. I think the dream was, when I think of it, back when I started working with Zé, I was 16 years old. You know, he spotted me, he saw me competing on a national tour. And he said, man, I want to work with you. I think you really have the thing to go all the way. And I want you to go study to Wellington Beach, all these crazy ideas. My mom was like, who's this not case, you know? Of course, I didn't do everything he wanted, but we dreamed so much together. And it was such a good partnership that I think all these bad moments, he was suffering with me back, you know, right there with me. And I felt that I had enough support to go through these moments. But definitely that year of 2005, with the passing of my father and watching my best buddy qualifying, and the idea that was taken from me that, you know, we were surfing together in this dream goal that we had, was a tough one. And then right in that year, end of the year, I remember I was in Waimea at our house. We got so drunk, me and Zé and João Valente, so drunk. And I told them, and I think I don't have enough gas for one more year. And he said, you're gonna meet this guy, a sports psychologist that I met, and you're gonna meet him. And he had spoken about him a few times before, but I was like, I don't need a psychologist, man. What are you talking about? I'm not sick. I don't need it. And he was like, okay. But that year at Sunset, like the next day, hangover day, I'm like, I don't have enough gas, man. And I don't know if I can do this again. You start from zero again, you know? And he said, let's just go talk to him. So I went to Lisbon. I made an appointment with him in a cafe. I went to Lisbon. It was like March. The year had started already when I think I was not even traveling. And I met Pedro Almeida, and it was just a fresh air, you know, a breeze of fresh air in my life. It's just talking to this person that was hearing and absorbing everything so well, and so refreshing that I chose to give it a go. So I started working with this guy in March. I was really low on self-esteem and confidence, but we started such a base kind of work, like from the beginning. You know, I went through all the steps in my career with him and discussing everything, and then his work was new, and for me it was good because I put so much effort on surfing every day and this and that. It felt good to go to Lisbon and just be working for a couple hours on your mental side. So the year was being a shitty year. You know, I was kind of like I didn't find myself in heats and stuff. And then we got to Ericeira again, to Rebeiradilhas, and I win the contest again, you know, as a defending champion. And that kind of made the year kind of, you know, a little bit more colorful, but I still finished like 34th in the ranking or something. But I was feeling a bit more prepared, you know. The year ends, and then 2007, I start fresh in Brazil with this guy, with Pedro Almeida in my corner. I also start traveling a bit with Andy King, because he was a Red Bull coach.
But what people don't realize is that, I mean, in competitive surfing, the ups and downs you go through, it's so tough, right? I mean, you're building this house, you're very close to finishing up this house, and then a big storm comes and it's completely destroyed. And the next year you have to start over again from scratch. I mean, that emotional factor of competitive surfing is tough, you know, like it's... You know,
dealing with your contracts in the end of the year.
Exactly. And, you know, like you might not even be able to start over from scratch again, you know, like that's what people don't realize. I mean, people look at your career and you're just like, wow, this guy's incredible. I mean, he's done so many things, but people don't realize those down moments of, you know, the suffering of, you know, like getting very close and, you know, starting from scratch again. And, you know, you're saying 2000, when you started in Brazil, very fresh. I didn't want to interrupt you because I think that's an important part that people don't really realize, the losses that come with competitive sports, especially surfing, you know. And
I think one of the things that made this easier and and more special as well, and I think made it work, is that I was never very, how do you say, tight with my budget, because I felt that Zé was such an important role. I never really equationed his salary or his weight on the project. I knew I was paying a lot. I was giving a lot of my contract away, my budget, actually yearly budget, although he was also doing my management. Yeah. He was a manager and a coach. But I think it worked really well because I never backed down when it was time to invest. And I invested a lot in my team, Pedro Almeida. And then I started investing in coaches. I work with Tomás Moraes, which is a guy that took the rugby national team to the world a little bit like I did, qualified for the first time. And it was right after that moment that I invested in the Tomás Moraes to make myself stronger. And that I think is very important because nowadays sometimes kids, they don't realize that they need to invest to get the result, and they think everything needs to be black and white straight away and cost effective, but sometimes it's not. You need to put it out front to collect the results after, and I think people don't know how much I invested in my career. They think they look at the achievements, but it's a very important part of this job, to be able to invest because you don't do anything by yourself. Surfing.
And tell me, you've been working with Zé for a long time. It's quite incredible to see that you've been working with the same person and still are working with him, since you're 16 and now in the projects we're going to talk about afterwards. But a whole career with the same person, that's astonishing, right? Having the same backbone, people change coaches all the time. We see it all the time. And you were able to maintain the same structure from your start of the career till the end of the career, which is really, really incredible.
There's hiccups, there's moments where we fought and we didn't agree, but we were always very honest and very frontal. That's something that makes it work. When you're transparent and you say it out loud that this is not working. We did it a lot of years. We had this little notebook that Zé handed to me at the end of the year, and now you're going to put the plus and the minus of myself, and I'll do it the same. Sometimes we didn't speak it. We didn't speak with words, but we wrote everything. And I let him know every year what I liked about him and what I didn't like about him, so he could work on it. And the same with me. He would, back in the day, he would say, you start dating this girl, and but this type of, sometimes when you speak it in front of a person, when you tell it, it's heavy, but when you write it and you have the time to read it and absorb it, it works. And it was the magic, I think, of our partnership, because we always were very transparent.
And it's especially hard. Working with someone where you have respect. The thing is, like, when you're traveling someone during competition, there's the ups, there's the downs, there's always wanting to blame it on someone, So it must be really extra hard to, maintain the same coach for that long,
And also finding, I was lucky enough to have Zé, because Zé is a very humble person, And when it wasn't working, the moments where it wasn't working that effectively, imagine like Andy King stepped in with Red Bull. A coach could have been like, who's Andy King, because Andy King was nobody back then. It was a coach that Red Bull put it in a program that I was benefiting because I was a Red Bull athlete. But Zé saw that I was working well with Kingy. He saw that the partnership was working well, so I put them in contact, and both of them did a stronger team. That's
amazing. That's amazing.
And we worked a lot, the three of us, because Zé wanted Kingy to work on me in different aspects technically, and Kingy is very, very technical, and that helped a lot. So that year that I started traveling a bit with Kingy, a bit with Zé, it was a mix. It was the year I qualified. It was the first year that I had a sports psychologist with me, the first full year, and I qualified half of the year. In August, I was qualified.
So that was also the year that you won Ribeirão.
No, I didn't want that year because I got to Ribeirão qualified.
Okay, that's amazing. So no, you didn't leave it until the end.
First heat.
But I want to know, like, I mean, I lived those competitions in Ribeirão like it was myself, you know, like, I mean, all the flags, you know, Saca's going to come up, the whole beach would come, the whole town. Huh?
Saca tudo.
Saca tudo, exactly. The t-shirts of Saca tudo, you know. I mean, the stress. I mean, it must be a beautiful thing to see a whole country behind you. Like, you don't see that anymore, you know, like the movement, it was like a soccer fans, you know. How did you feel those days? How was winning the event in your home turf, but also the negative side, the beautiful negative side of the public putting so much pressure on you and living it, you know?
You can put it this way. How was Ribeirão and how was Peniche?
Yeah, exactly.
It was magic, you know. It was so special to come in from the water and just having so much people around and so much good energy. But yeah, during the tough times when I didn't felt I was, I don't know, I didn't felt confident enough. I never felt confident in Super Tubes for some reason. That weight of having the whole beach for yourself, you know, when you're watching the ocean the whole day, and those moments where you start anticipating your heat the hour before, you see the beach getting packed with flags and stuff, and you're like, where are the waves? You know, what do I do here? And it made it uncomfortable to me.
And also knowing, I mean, in competitive surfing, you're not only dependent of yourself, of your performance, you're also dependent of lining up with the right waves, which is not a guarantee, especially in a place like Peniche, you know. It must have been tough.
I used to say I didn't get any advantage in Peniche. I think I got a disadvantage because I got way more stress, and you don't control anything in Peniche. You competed as a wild card there. You don't control. You might be able to find yourself out there, but you might lose yourself in the lineup as well. So you don't get any advantage by surfing in Peniche as a Portuguese. If anything, you get more stressed because you want to perform in front of this stadium. And people are so close to you in Peniche. You know, you can feel the people in the water with you. Oh, it makes it tough.
So how was qualifying? How did you feel about qualifying? Finally, you achieved the biggest achievement as a Portuguese surfer ever. After so many years, after so many expectations, you finally qualified. You know, Tiago Pires, the Portuguese prince, is on tour, you know? How did you feel like the king in the castle? Like, how was that?
Not really, no. I think the turning point of that year was I went to West Oz, to Margaret River for, I think, 5 years in a row. I didn't make a heat. I couldn't find myself. I couldn't compete out there. I never knew which wave to catch, you know, as I was going on lefts because of 4-man heats, you know, in the beginning of the events, it was a four-man field. So I always lost myself at Margaret. You know, me and Zeo, we already have a chant that we used to sing in the car that it's now or never, Margaret River. It's singing like chants already because we felt that something needed to change.
It was calling the waves to you.
I never made a hit in 5 years. The whole 5 times I was there, I didn't make a hit, and it was a very important event. It was the first big event of the year. After Brazil, after your Aussie leg, and then you had this big event that threw a lot of points. But that year I was staying with Andy King. It was a little bit different, bit more, a different house vibe and stuff. And then I had also the knowledge from my psychologist. I make my first heat in Margaret's, and I felt like I won the contest, you know. and then I didn't stop until the final, where I lost to Kieran Perro. You know, it was the first heat I make at Margaret's. I made it all the way to the final, and then I felt this is different because I had come from Brazil with a few results. Basically, where I was working with my psychologist was trying to give some consistency to my career, to my year, because I had always 1 or 2 wins, you know, but then I had really low results as backups. So my head was super inconsistent, you know, because I felt the pressure, I felt whatever. And then we were working a lot on consistency, making heats and really focusing in points and surfing and not thinking about points. I mean, points of waves and not points of rankings, and just focusing battle by battle and little tricks that he gave me. And then I go that year fresh from the start with Pedro. I go to Brazil. We had the thing like you have to make 2 to 3 rounds per contest. Every contest doesn't mean the result. Doesn't. So I went to Brazil. I make like 2 quarterfinals. Boom, boom, making like 2-3 rounds per contest. And then I go to Margaret, and yeah, I stop in the final. So I move up to first in the ranking, and I stayed in first the whole probably first half of the year until Lacanau, when Jordi wins, and I go to second. It was the year that myself, Jordi, and Dane qualified.
Jesus,
it was like that year, and yeah, I think Margaret really switched the mode of my head. Like
2007, right?
2007,
27. I remember you qualified when you're 27.
In Lacanau, Hal Hunt says, "Tiago, you're qualified." It was like August. The year ends in December. Why? I was like, I don't know. I would love to see my face nowadays, but I was just arriving.
Must feel so good.
Arriving to touching a goal it's been a dream for so many years, and evoked so many emotions on you, down and good and bad emotions. It was super strong, but I was in the middle of a contest. So I made an okay result, and then I go to Ericeira, qualified after 2 wins in the previous 2 years. But the party was so big that I lost first heat in Ribeira de Ilhas. I didn't care,
chapter done, qualified. Tell me, I heard about you guys as a year force. You were very unified during the competitions, but it also came down. Whenever the season stopped, you guys always went on a crazy trip, right? And that year you qualified. You guys, it must have been insane to get the whole team together. You guys must have went to a very exotic place to shut off from surfing for a couple of days. Where do you guys go that year? It must have been crazy.
Probably Moscow or...
No, what is 5 professional surfers doing in Moscow, man?
I don't know.
Just having a good time.
Sightseeing.
Tall blonde buildings.
We were just different kind of performing. But I think the energy that we lived, everything. No one was jealous of my results. Like the group was really happy for unified. Me. And then you felt it. You felt like Jeremy, Mickey. We were all like getting results and qualifying. Unfortunately, Patrick never qualified, but Team Bull qualified, Marlon qualified, Aritz qualified. So it was just creating results, this vibe, this unified vibe that we had. When we had Daz coming and Vince Cardizak coming along and doing these nice episodes for a French TV show. And it just created this family, you felt really supported. We actually 1 year were 7 on CT, 7 Europeans.
Jesus, man, that's a. But especially for Portugal, how it impacted your qualification. That was the timing of a shift where surfing went mainstream in Portugal. You started having big investment from corporate Portuguese brands into the sport. Big contracts were been throwing around. Something that has really changed the paradigm of Portuguese surfing. You got picked up by Temien. You were, on big billboards. Tiago Pires was, top 3 most recognized athletes in Portugal. How was that time?
Yeah, it was just like a new era. I think I didn't felt it so much because I knew I was going to have a hard year, my first year on tour. So I didn't want to get knocked out. I think one of the most difficult things you can leave as an athlete, as a surfer, is qualified and get dropped off after first year, not qualified for your second year. So all this was amazing. I was living, the moment of my career, but I needed to be very humble to know that the next year would be very hard for me because rookies always had a tough time, especially back then, I think.
And especially during an era where you had, you know, the top 10, the Hobgoods, Taj, Andy, and Kelly. You know, like, I mean, there was 10 incredible guys on tour, you know, that were like the heroes, right? It was a very competitive tour back then.
The Cooley kids, you know.
Mick,
and Joel.
Jesus, Dingo, you know.
Dingo made some results. It was a lot of
Dane,
talent.
Jordy, right? I mean, like the top 20 was incredible, you know, like it was really competitive.
You had guys that were super talented qualifying, like Dane and Jordy. And then you had guys that were so experienced competing on those waves because they've been there 10 times. And they were really hard to beat because they knew exactly which waves to catch, you know, and you didn't. So the rookie life is a tough one. So in my first year, I chose to do the QS straight away, you know, and I felt that I was getting results so easily on the QS because my mind wasn't nervous at all. You know, it felt like a walk in the park. So I actually requalified via QS in my first year. I finished, I think, 28th in the rankings, and you would qualify. No, I finished like 32 because I made that semifinal at Bali. I still had a good year, but not enough. But I qualified via QS. It made me stay there for my second year, and your second year changes everything. But getting back to your thing, it was pretty big. You know, I don't hide it. You know, it's pretty big because TMN was funny because they invested it in me for the first time the year I qualified. So it's like magic, you know. They invested in me, and I qualified at the end of the year. They got boom, like they in one way it was really nice and special for surfing because it made the CEO look at this sport. You know, so much noise around it. The CEO of the brand of the company.
Of the Portuguese Telecom, which is one of the biggest companies in Portugal, right?
Yeah, probably number 1 or 2, you know. He looks at it and it feels it's a good investment. And then it backs it. And my contract goes, you know, 3 times next year. And we start having these little side projects because they're a big brand. They need to activate way more than just one athlete, which is really good for the sport. You know, they created the dream team. They created Saca Tour. They created a surf team.
It was the first time ever there was actually millions being thrown around in the surfing industry. You know, like, I mean, obviously a big part was directed towards you, but all the projects happening around, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you were a highly paid athlete at that time, probably the way you don't see in Portugal anymore, you know, like it was.
I think I was probably kind of like, I wouldn't say I was top 5 in the world, but I would say top 10 probably without any results of a top 10, you know.
Yeah.
But I was in the mix because I got so much attention from my non-endemic sponsors. You know, I had Red Bull backing me, I had TMN, and then I had Tourism of Portugal, and I had, you know, and I had my contract with Billabong, which was a good contract. Nowadays, a very good contract, but back then it was an okay contract, and I was happy with it. I bumped into the A team, Australian or international Billabong team. I was doing trips with Andy and Taj and Joel. Of course, my salary was way lower than them, but then I had the backup that they didn't have brands like TMN or I don't know. No surfer could dream of having a phone sponsor paying as much as I was getting, or, you know, you were really limited to surf brands.
So in terms of contract, I mean, you were barely making the cut on the tour, but you were on the top 10 most paid athletes in surfing alongside guys like the Hobgoods and stuff like that are, you know, had big contracts at the time, you know, close to the millions and stuff like that, which is really impressive for a small country. Right? I mean, we're talking about a country with 12 million peep habitats, you know, and an emerging sport, you know. So that was a huge milestone. I mean, if you think about it, it's really, really, really incredible.
And it made me as well, like invest as well in my career. Like I invested on a team to follow me and do content and create. Not even do content. It was more like working sideways with national TV. You know, we produced content to national TV release. We produced it every time I had a heat. You know, my my team would produce a news for the prime news TV. You know, they would pass. You know, if I was in Fiji, you know, we were always struggling with the dates and different time schedules.
I remember that when you beat Kelly in Bali. I mean, it opened up national TV.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that moment. I mean, I think that was a very special moment for you and also for me. We have a really cool story together in Bali.
That was my magic, huh? What an event, you know. I think for some reason, the surge kind of gave me an advantage because it was that itinerant event that was never on the same spot. So everybody was kind of like leveled in terms of experience competing. And that kind of like when I see it, when I think of it, it gave me a little extra margin because the dinosaurs of tour didn't have the experience of competing the previous years. So I started really well in Padang Padang. I won my first heat with a 9 point something with a crazy barrel. I beat Pancho and Adriano. And then I go straight to round 3. And then, of course, I was one of the lowest seeds. Who do I get in round 3?
Kelly Slater.
And I remember you were there. You were there in one of your Indonesian missions. Huh? You was just hanging out there and surfing. And then we spoke, and you joined the crew. I was with Carlos Pinto and Ricardo Capristano. And then you offer yourself to carry for me for that heat. You were always I think you shaved your head.
I was shaved head.
It looked like Kelly was in the lineup and in the channel as a caddy. It was like two Kellys. But yeah, it was a funny moment. You know that I draw Kelly in my third round. I had made a few third rounds already before, but never make it after past third round. I made it at Tahiti where I lost to Joel with a 10.
I remember that. Yeah.
A 10 and an 8. But yeah, comes Bali, comes Uluwatu. That was, for me, it was a new wave. I never surfed Uluwatu like that. I had no experience out there. But yeah, it was an amazing heat, you know. It's just one of those dream stories that what do you want to say? It's like if you have to choose a way of beating the best surfer on the planet, it would be like that, you know, trading barrels with the king, you know.
So for me, it was quite a special moment. Obviously, it was your first year on tour, and you know, I was in the channel. I was your caddy at the time, shaved head. You know, looked exactly like Kelly. So Kelly was riding. I was on the channel. You know, it was hard to know which one was the Kelly. But anyways, you end up beating Kelly.
Yeah.
And it was like an insane moment. You know, like Portuguese surfer beating Kelly in pristine conditions, the best in the world.
Kelly had won 4 events before Bali.
Yeah.
He didn't win. The only event he didn't win that year. The only event he didn't win out of the 5 was Chopa that he lost with an interference to Manuel Rollet.
Yeah.
And then he comes to Bali, and if he wins Bali, he's the world champ.
Exactly.
On like the 7th event of the year or 6th or whatever.
So you beat Kelly on the year. It was his 10th world title. If you win that one, it was his 11th or something like that.
Probably.
So you end up beating. He comes out of the water. He's crying, and you know what's really funny? I mean, we were staying together in that. It was my 18th birthday. So I went partying that night. And for some reason, I was dating a girl at the time that was related to Kelly. And I'm driving back from Bali back to the home. I had promised my idol, Tiago Pires, that I was caddy for him in the next morning. You know, it's 5 a.m. I promised Saca I would be there at 6 a.m. And I start calling this girl that was related to Kelly, and this guy answers, you know, at 5 a.m. and or like 4 a.m. or something like that. And I'm like, what the hell? You know, this guy is you know, who is this guy sleeping with this girl that I'm seeing, you know? And I'm like, you know, I start telling this guy I'm going to kill him, you know, like just being this 18-year-old jealous guy, you know? And the guy hangs up. I call him again. I say, where is he? I'm going to kill him. You know, I'm going to kill you. 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 I'm like so stressed and had a couple drinks on my 18th birthday. Anyways, next morning, I go to bed, you know, I wake up early morning to caddy for Saca. And I get these messages and I have this instant kind of feeling like, shit, what happened last night? You know, something went wrong, you know? And I wake up to a message of that girl who's telling me like, what the hell are you doing waking up Kelly at 4 a.m. in the morning? You know, it's telling him you're going to kill him, you know? And next thing I know, I'm like, shit, I can't believe I just called Kelly and I'm going to caddy for Saca against Kelly that morning. So I go up, you know, head down up to Saca, knock on his door. I'm like, shit, some bad thing happened last night, man. I called Kelly and I told him I was going to kill him. and Saca is just laughing his head off. He's just like, what did you do? Anyways, and I promised I'm sitting on the channel, you know, watching Saca beat Kelly. And you know, every time that Kelly catches a wave, he has to paddle back me, you know, with a shaved head, and knowing that I called him, you know, a couple hours before, telling I was going to kill him, and he really saw it as like, you know, as a mind fuck, you know, that someone was playing games with him, you know, and he loses, comes out.
He's such a guy that he's such a mind guy, you know, mind game guy that he's always looking at things that because he's like that. He likes to work with mind strategies towards his opponents.
So he thought that the Portuguese tiger came and really rattled his cage like never before, you know. So that was a really funny moment. He came in, we came on the same wave. He's like looking at me, you know, he knew who I was due to this mutual relationship we had. And he had just lost. He lost his world title against an underdog like Tiago. And the funny thing, I was sponsored by Quicksilver at the time. The year came to an end. I still had a shaved head. I looked like Kelly Slater, and I lost my sponsor for some reason. Oh God knows what.
Someone called
someone, and Nic is out of the team. You know.
No. It was pretty hectic that day. You know.
Funny moments for the memory books. Portuguese media.
I think the energy was just with us that day. You know. Yeah. It was just a team thing.
But that was such an incredible moment to be a part of that, you know.
And don't forget that with 5 minutes to go, end of the heat, I was on a combo of 16 points.
Jesus.
5 minutes to go.
That's crazy.
That's why the heat is that special, because Kelly did an amazing heat. You know, he had 2 I-8s on the board, and I had nothing. I had just wipeout after mistiming, you know, waves and maneuvers and whatever. And then with 5 minutes to go, I put myself a 9 on the board. With 5 minutes to go, I passed by you with the jet ski. You know, the time to get back to the lineup, they used to let us like near some buoys. It was super far. I paddle like a maniac. I get to the lineup. I hear my score, 9 point something. You needed 7 points, and then there's like a minute to go. And Kelly, I'm sitting next to Kelly, and Kelly, I look at his face and I see that he's worried. I see that he's not like normal. He's like splashing water a lot, trying to kind of like getting into me. And then, well, if it was to be a normal heat, the sets would stop, you know, and there was no more waves. But for some reason, we had the whole how do you say, universe with us, and I see 1 minute to go. I see lines on the horizon, so many lines. I'm like, they're gonna get here in time. And the lineup was Mick and Rodrigo Dornelles as well, and they're getting excited because they're seeing these sets of waves, like waves and waves coming, and I'm like, shit, this is on, man. This is on. The first wave comes, like 20 seconds to go. I had no priority, so I start paddling to the wave like. In a way, I really wanted to go, but I knew Kelly was going to try to play defense on me. So I'm committed to this wave with 20 seconds to go. And because he looked at me and saw that I was committed and the wave looked good. The wave actually looked good. He looks at me like last minute, it chose us to go. And because he was so worried about me, he kind of misread the wave and did like a late drop and didn't even pull in. So he went straight and, you know, hit shit. And then I turn around, there's like 10 seconds to go and there's one better one. And I start paddling out to try to get it. I paddle like my life. And they were counting down and I just got that wave and did like another 8 point something. come out of the barrel in front of his beers, you know, of Kelly, and you were screaming, and I did this huge, massive claim, and I knew that I had way more than a 7, and it was just like a crazy moment.
So, I mean, that first year beating Kelly in Bali in such a special heat, that must have given you a lot of confidence. What a great feeling. I mean, what incredible memory. That was, I mean, you know, what is it? 2007, was it?
8.
2008. So yeah, that was 16 years ago, right?
Yeah.
16 years ago.
You know, but it didn't really, it helped, of course, but in that first year, like again, if I didn't do the QS committed and tried to secure my spot via QS, I would have been out. And that would really make things really bad for me in terms of more mentally, like in terms of sponsors. You really get uncredited if you qualified and just drop off in the first year, because I kept my spot there with the QS. The second year, and I was there again, and I was competing in a different way already, way less nervous, you know, way more knowing what judges are expecting of me, you know, with less pressure, I'd say, but also more experience, and that made me stay there for 7 years, probably. 7 years,
that's right. I was just doubting. I didn't know if it was 5 years or 7 years, which is quite incredible. What were your best moments on tour? Like, what were the best events? I remember that heat against Joel, where you guys had both 210s, right, or something like that, or it was a very close call. Tell us what were.
That year was with Joel was a shit show, you know, because Joel had 2 6s and he beat me with a 10 and an 8, and
because of a shitty interference, wasn't it?
It was a shitty interference. It was actually shitty
judging.
Not judging. They didn't turn the priority disc after after this wave that came, that they say that I paddled to, and in my head I didn't paddle, I just sniffed the wave, and I didn't commit. But you know, Joel was behind me, more inside, and he lifted his arms like I was paddling, but in my head I didn't paddle. So after that, there's a bigger wave, and we start scratching for that second one, and because I thought in my mind, I look at the disc didn't change. And while I'm paddling with my back to the structure, of course, looking at, you know, thinking about the wave, you know, and Joel was also trying to get the wave. They're like announcing, priority change, you know, white,
Jesus.
I don't know, red is priority now, which was Joel. And of course I didn't see the disc turning. So I just dropped in on Joel. Like I thought that I still had priority, and so because it was an interference in the priority moment already. If it had happened in the beginning without priority, I would have lost half of my second score, which I would still beat him, because I had a 10 and an 8.
Jesus,
I would have had a 14, and he had a 12 hit total. And then I was fuming, man. I remember I get to a boat, I call Zé, what the fuck happened, man? What the fuck? I know I beat him, and me and Joel were kind of rivals, you know, in the Billabong team, and Joel had some bad moments, not bad, but like not nice moments. Joel sometimes can be a bit of a prick, and he was a prick to me on the Gold Coast when we were young, way past in the day. Like he could have gave me a ride in his car, and I had no ride. I had to walk to a photo shoot for like 1 hour. Photo shoot that was in Kira, and
fuck this Portuguese guy, let him walk.
Let him walk. So I walked for and then he used to drop in on me a lot. He was a bit of a prick back then, and that heat was like, fuck, I smoked him with a 10.
Jesus.
And then I lost that heat, and I was like, fuck. And it was big news, and of course I argued. I went all the way to the tower, blah blah blah. But
did you throw rocks?
No, there was no rocks.
No, there was no rocks.
No, it was bad, because maybe that heat I would have qualified with the third that I had in Bali. But you know, you never think about this. But I always felt really comfortable doing those events, like the left leg of the tour. You know, Chopo,
backside barrels, man.
Fiji,
I wanted to.
Chopo, Fiji, Bali was just a one-off thing. But I felt really comfortable at Chopo and Fiji all the time. So I needed that, because when I was the events where I needed to do turns, I felt kind of like shaky, you know. I didn't feel my surfing that strong and that how do you say like I couldn't really mark my turns. I couldn't really show my surfing. I was surfing nervous with jelly legs, so my carve wasn't really happening. You know, it's shaky, and the judges, you know,
could see that. Yeah,
they would kill me for that. So.
Yeah. But your backside barrels, I mean, some of the best in the world. I remember those, you know, bottom turns to stall with the hands on the back, you know?
Yeah, I was different, doing a little bit of a different line, you know, I think, and also surfing bigger boards, surfing some Aracaos that gave me a lot of confidence, because they were holding really well. They were like bigger than most of the guys. And I was just drawing different lines. I think judges appreciated it. You know, coming from Portugal, as you also know very well, we kind of grow up feeling comfortable riding a foam ball, you know, and on tour during those events, I felt comfortable, and way more comfortable than all the back end of the ranking. So it was sort of like an advantage to me that I needed to captivate it or to secure my spot. So, you know, it was. But throughout the years, I tended to get some good results when the lefts were on, but also I was able to back it up with my frontside surfing more.
Big carves, you know.
More confident, you know.
Yeah. But I mean, I always saw you obviously as a competitive surfer that has achieved incredible results over the years. But I also think what gave you a lot of respect within the community and what made you different was your heavy wave approach. I mean, you've been a pioneer at the cave. You've gotten incredible barrels back in the day. Peralta was also, you know, one of the pioneers at Peralta, one of the pioneers of big wave surfing, toe surfing in Nazaré. I remember those videos that you used to make really set a gap between, you know, a guy like Joel Parkinson or, you know, anyone else on tour at that time and who you were, you know, like, I mean, and this is pre-era of content creation. You did it out of passion, right? You did this because you really loved it. And I mean, the videos, I can't remember, it's still one of my best. I remember like 10 years ago or 5 years ago even, when I want to show a clip about Portugal, I would show your video, you know.
Surfline.
On Surfline, exactly. The one where you're just getting barrel at Coches, getting barrel at the cave. You got this crazy barrel at Peralta towing. I mean,
it's the heaviness of the surfing, of the images, huh? It's just
so
all the
heavy.
waves are kind of heavy, you know? And people weren't used to see that type of images coming from Portugal.
Anywhere, man. I mean, like...
it was the first time people see cave on a video. And I think for some reason, someone told me that Kelly even spoke about it on an interview during a live webcast or whatever when I was surfing. And it's the first time he sees cave and says like, what's this wave, you know? But for me, yeah, like you said, it was very organic, because I didn't think about, I'm going to get this and that out of this movie, out of this clip. I just wanted to, I don't know, it's just documenting my day. And then sometimes that video, Surfline video, actually came into the conversation, because one of my best friends, he plays drums at a heavy metal band, and he's actually, the music is from his band.
Sick.
And it was one of those projects, you know, I want to do a clip with your music, and for some reason we did it. And then I think Capristano, my videographer, he I don't know if he sent it or who sent the video to Surfline, but it got viral. You know, it got 50,000 views in one day or whatever. Back then it was kind of huge, and then just kind of like presented myself to the world as this heavy wave kind of like surfer.
I think that gave you a lot of respect, and I think that's something that's very important. Everyone's able to do airs these days. Everyone's able to do big carves and stuff like that. But I think, you know, if you want that upper edge, you need to prove yourself in heavy surf, you know? And a guy like John Florence sets, you know, the bar in that way. Even like Gabriel and stuff like that, incredible barrel rider these days. So obviously, I think people really respected you because of that as well. You know, like this guy is not only, you know, getting contest results, but he's also putting in the time in big surf and stuff like that. I mean, that big left. Tell us about that big left. Tell us about First of all, cave. That barrel you got through the rocks and stuff like that. I mean, there was so much in stake at that time because you're trying to qualify, but pulling through that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you gotten hurt out there a couple times.
Yeah, actually, I had some really bad wipeouts during those years, but I never really got hurt until 2011 when I was on tour on the CT already. But I think it was just my nature, I grew up surfing São Lourenço Beach in Ericeira, trying to find barrels, it's always these crazy little slabs, and rocks and cave was one of those things, we heard about an Hawaiian that surfed there during a QS, but didn't really surf. No one really knew if it was that one or the one after. So this one time we were surfing Koshus and it was glass as never before, glassy, and the waves were kind of like, it was the perfect swell for cave because sort of a north swell that didn't really make things very interesting in Koshus. So we said, we between our buddies, we said, let's paddle there and let's surf it today. And whoever gets the best wave out there, the best barrel, gets to name the wave because there was no name, It was still a virgin wave. So I paddled out there with Paulo and Grego and Ruben, the four of us, and it was just magical. It was just beach glass. There was not a little thing of wind and these crazy images that the first time we were looking at it so close, it was so different from Koshus. And then we start like, everybody was always like, any of us that would get away would be like, woo, everybody's screaming. So magical. And then I get to do a proper barrel, when I get to go down the steps and I did an amazing barrel. No one saw it because they were on the lineup. And I just like, I think I screamed so much that I was like, fuck. And then they were like, okay, you get to name it. So I put it, I called it Sub Cave or whatever. And then Grego said, let's leave it Cave. And then it stayed like Cave. And, I felt that wave gave me so much more than Koshus and all the other barrels I was surfing back then that were already heavy waves. That I tried to not lose, man, because the wave is pretty consistent. Huh? We all know.
Super consistent, yeah.
But you can't just surf there all the time because the risk of getting smashed, is so high.
I mean, you felt it. You felt the poison more than anyone. I mean, you scratched your backs. You hurt yourself out there. I mean, the person knocked your head as well, right? I mean, you and Antonio Silva are probably the guys that got the most hurt out there. It is one of the most dangerous waves in the world. I mean, it's a lot more dangerous than it looks. You're in that barrel, that intensity of that barrel just rolling down the reef, right? It's so thick. Feels like you're locked into a basement, into a cave, and it just goes so fast and dark, and it goes straight into that reef, and that reef actually sticks out. So it's really, really dangerous. And I mean, but it's an incredible wave. It's probably one of the best waves in the world.
The risk, the higher the
reward as well.
The reward and the pleasure, and the pleasure to whoever likes that type of pleasure. But adrenaline goes up out through the roof.
Through the roof, yeah.
Like not many waves in the world, let's say.
And showing up at that big left when you guys were towing, I mean, those images, I remember seeing that when I was in Australia, way before I even thought about surfing those kind of waves, waves that I surf these days. But I mean, like, how was it feeling like, oh my God, like, this is like Chopu, this is better than Chopu. How did it feel like towing into those waves? You had an incredible barrel. I mean, how was it?
Man, I was 24 years old, huh? I was super young.
Yeah.
As a kid, I just wanted to get a sniff of a tow experience. Basically, we had bought an old ski, myself, Grego and Paulo. We had bought an old ski in second hand, was a shit ski. But we had a little bit of an experience with our French friends that we surf when the day we surfed. We surfed. Actually, the whole towing thing started in Portugal because we wanted to surf Cabo raso really big. We weren't thinking about Nazaré, about any other wave. We wanted to surf that wave really big for some reason. So we called the guys, come over. There's going to be massive Cabo raso, and this one day, a massive swell, one of the biggest ones ever, comes, and we organized the French team to get down with all the skis. They had way more experience because they used to drive during the events, the Quick Pro and stuff. And they used to surf Bellara and all those big spots. So they had way more experience than us, good skis. So they all come. There were like 3 or 4 skis, guys and stuff. And we are at the sunrise. We are at Cabo. The swell is huge. And you're like, fuck, the wave is shit, man. The wave is shit, this big. So what do we do? You know, the swell is... So we drove we didn't know where to go. You know, Nazaré wasn't really a possibility. So we drove up to Consolação to surf the big wave spot there. All this contingency, all this train of cars and skis. We get like 2 hours to get to Peniche. We get there, the wave is like kind of a burger outside, super big, but burger. We're like, what do we do, man? The guys are here, came from France. And we had this idea of Cascais, but we didn't really think of it, of the Marina wave, you know. So we said, fuck, there's nothing else to surf. It's huge. So let's try the Marina. So we pulled in front of Cascais Bay of the Marina. It was like 4 in the afternoon in the winter. It was like 2 more hours of light.
Jesus.
And we see this set, man, amazing, huge, like 20-foot set, 25-foot set, lines, just like long lines, roaring through Coconuts Disco and the Design Hotel there. We're like, fuck, and the French guys are super excited. Let's go surf this. And it's super easy. The marina is right there. Let's go. We rushed into the water, man. We have this crazy session. It was big. It was, I'd say, like 20-foot Hawaiian. But just like a long wave. You need to surf the wave. The wave is super fast and long. So, you know, I had an amazing wave, probably the best wave of the day, with the board from you know, we did shitty boards, man, the material, no life vest for those basic life vests from the skis, you know, nothing was thought, and there was no equipment. So I just, every winter, you know, I was finishing my season in Hawaii. I wasn't qualifying, but I wanted to work on that, you know, feeling different emotions, feeling different waves and heaviness and stuff. So we tried. And that year we went to Peralta, and it was such a weird wave to surf, man. It was like in the middle of the ocean, this slab. The first few waves, I was like completely lost out there. And then eventually I found myself in one jam, you know, and I remember it was like, it was a serious like stand-up barrel on like, I don't know, 15-footer, whatever it is. And
so bigger than, I mean, it was huge.
And it was just this vision that I was like lying, like standing tall in the barrel that I couldn't even touch. And on the left in Portugal was so magical, you know?
I mean, one of the best waves in the world. I mean, right? I mean, that clip you had was just insane, and it really opened. That was also like feeding for
me, it was like, it was worth nothing, you know? It wasn't worth nothing. I was like, I could have probably get, you know, hurt and not starting the year on the QS well. I just love to go search for those emotions, you know, the big barrels. I love to. And luckily enough, I had a little team of guys. Grego would follow. Paulo was also wanting to come sometimes. And otherwise, if I would have been alone, it would have been hard because there was no structure.
Incredible. I mean, really, really amazing. And it opened up the doors for... Those guys had a huge, huge impact in big wave surfing, in slab chasing. Grego, Paulo, you know, before Garrett came, Gregorio and you guys had surfed Nazaré before. Not many people know about that version of the story, but it is true, you know, and you are living proof of that, you know.
We lost skis out there, losing skis in Nazaré since 2004.
It's 2004, exactly. But it's quite incredible, such a successful career in competitive surfing, and also really, you know, chasing the dream. And that's what surfing is all about, you know, keeping the essence of surfing, of chasing waves, of getting barreled, you know. Competitive part is really important, obviously, but before you want to win events, you have to have a solid base as a surfer, as a true surfer, you know, and I think you're a testament of that, you know. I feel like surfers like you don't exist many these days anymore, unfortunately, you know.
Yeah, I think it's just a generational thing, you know. I came from I showed up from a generation that we really looked at things differently and the base of everything was the emotions and the search for get that feed from the waves from surfing, and not so much the money, the status, or because we were so far away from the big leads, let's say, that we wanted to first of all like get amazing feelings, amazing rides and emotions, and then of course if you reach the spotlight, if you reach the top of the ladder, it would be a plus. But no one has done it, so no one has done it before. So how are you gonna get too committed, too serious about the career that no one has done it? So everything was sort of like an evolutional process. But yeah, of course, I had it in my genes, in my blood, So I couldn't really ignore the fact that
it was love.
It was love.
It was love. Passion. You had an incredible career. I mean, 7 years on tour, won a lot of QSs, opened a lot of doors for everyone. Made a shit ton of money from Billabong to Quicksilver. Made some really smart investments.
I wouldn't call it shit ton, but
but anyways, for that generations, you did great. Really like an example for international level. You have Kelly Slater in Portugal. We couldn't have had a better example than you. Your career came to an end in 2014, 15?
14 was my last year on tour. And then I did the next year where I was traveling and doing my movie, my documentary. I traveled a bit with you, with Vasco and Kikas, just basically filming my exiting. But yeah, so I did a few QSs, 15, but I wasn't really competing for my career. I was competing for my movie, actually.
How was that transition from being thinking about sports all your life and shifting into another life?
It was nice because I just my wife got pregnant that year. My last year on tour, my wife got pregnant. I think it was probably when after I came back from being 3 weeks in Tahiti with the trees, I came in so hungry. She got pregnant after Tahiti. Then I always wanted to be a dad, so I kept that out of the equation until I was on my top form, until I was on the most important moment of my career. So, but 2014 I had come from a very bad injury on my knee. 2013, which gave me I was granted a wild card for 2014 because sadly enough, I think I was sort of like a late bloomer in my career. And then the year I was feeling more stronger physically, it was that year that I got a worst injury of my life, which was a torn ligament, interior ligament. And it was really bad. I was trying to recover for 6-7 months. And it took a lot of energy. And so I come back the year after, 14, I did some okay results. I was like one heat of requalifying, but then when I started that year in Australia, I redid my knee in Australia, another gray one. It was just like a torn. But I competed like the first two events in Australia. Again, my knee was upsetting me and stuff. So I felt that, when I found out that my wife was pregnant, I felt it was that moment, like you did good, man. You did 7 years. I never knew I was going to qualify. So
14 years, 7 years on tour, 7 years on the QS, winning events, doing great things. But did you have any hard feelings? How was it tough, that transition of like turning the page?
I was really emotionally, mentally drawn. Like I had no more energy. Like everything was well, I had money, I had a wife, I had a good life, but I think I was a bit tired of my head, Maybe, I don't know, the new type of kind of reorganizing your career, like really active, the social network started to play a stage as well. And different areas that I didn't really wanted to work on, start being important as well. But I felt like I had no more gas, and then my kid is coming. I was super excited. I had signed in 2011 a 10-year contract with Quicksilver, which was the only time Quicksilver signed the guy for 10 years.
That's amazing. Plus a surf shop in Ericeira.
Plus a surf shop. So I was I was like, I can do so much stuff in Portugal that will make me feel full, and
fulfilling,
rich, fulfilling. And so it really helped. And the movie the documentary was the first project. It made me start thinking about new things, new areas in my life, my professional life. During the documentary, Vasco approached me and asked for help. I said, sorry, I'm doing this documentary. I cannot help you, but let's speak next year. And in my back of my head, I already had this little idea that I wanted to become like a manager. Like I would like to help someone, but it's a job. It's a profession that really you really need to commit to a person. It's like a marriage, and you need to have talent. So Vasco was a big talent back then. He had some problems like organizing his life. Kikas had just qualified that year, 2016. And, I accepted this new chapter of my life, becoming a manager, and also starting to always had these visions that I wanted to do some new stuff in Portugal and open more doors to the sport. So I started organizing some events. I'm helping out Vasco. Teresa also comes along. It didn't go well with them. It didn't go well because, it's like I have my own way of doing things, and we didn't really connect. We didn't really close like this partnership like I did with Seabra. So it was always kind of like forcing it, and I chose to stop before it goes really bad. So didn't really happen with those two, but it made me start thinking on a more of an entrepreneurship way, building a business. And that's the beginning of things, and beginning of React Sports Management, the beginning of me organizing events like the biggest surf class in the world, it was a Guinness World Record, and then different events, always kind of like outside the box events.
And the project you're doing right now with EDP is one of the most incredible projects that is happening in the world of surfing on an international level. I mean, having the partnership of the guidance of a guy like you, Tiago, and Zé, that have been working together on your career for 16 years, and that transitioning to the next generation and captivating European talent and directing them on being the next world champions and qualifying from a young age, bringing them from A to Z, is incredible. And I mean, it's amazing to see. Tell us a little bit about that project. I mean, maybe some people don't know. It was the idea started out of we reading results, and European surfers, European representation on CT is still very low and very short, and we cannot say that we are on the beginning of the millennium, that we had no experience, not many events in Portugal, not many investment. We cannot say that. We are being liars. There's a lot of money in the table in Portugal. There's a lot of opportunity, and the last 10 years, 15 years, the surfing became so big in Portugal that also brought a lot of people that wanted to sniff and wanted to, get a piece of the steak, and that made the surgement of a lot of coaches, a lot of guys that have no experience, and they deal with talent. They are really close to talent that can become really good. You never know with surfers if they're gonna be good or not. Sometimes the not so talented guys are the ones that make it. And so there's a lot with experience. In choosing the right path that will play a big role
in the kids' career. And me, Zé, and Salvador, we used to be my partner. We came to a conclusion that there was a lot of investment, a lot of opportunity in Europe. We thought about Europe, and there was no results. There was no representation. You had Jeremy, you had Michel, you had Kikas. It's very short,
For the talent and for the waves Europe has, and for the legacy, for the culture as well. I think there's a huge potential. We need world champions. I
think we need more representation. We have a solid base already. And we have the money. We have more money than the Australians and the Brazilians. So what's happening? So we came to a conclusion that the problem was on the formation, on the base of the pyramid of the career of a surfer. That surfers were getting a lot of not so good feedback, not so good inputs that were kind of like making them lose themselves, lose track of themselves, look at the wrong places at the wrong at certain times, and we ended up losing a lot of talent, junior talent or talent that could be very, very good for Europe. So this project, EDP Surfs for Tomorrow, was created thinking about, okay, let's us, with our experience, try to help the next generation to reach their goals, to reach their dreams by giving them the right, what we think is the right, because we have experience, we've been there, we know how hard it is, which choices you have to do in certain moments. Let's give them their expertise. So we chose a team of European surfers and EDP. They backed it up. They saw the potential. The energy world is also changing to a more green, to the energy of tomorrow. And that came, side by side with this project. It's thinking about the future, how we deal with, the challenges that we're facing. And it's been going on for 4 years already. And I think it's helping a lot of kids.
And the results have been shown, right? I mean,
the results are starting because we chose to work with them really from the start. It's when you can sort of help kids to structure their thoughts, and it's challenging. We haven't had no one on the CT yet, but we are talking about the team. They're all around 18, 16. So, but they're starting to show results.
Showing results, winning QSs. One of the kids is a world champion.
The other one just qualified for the challengers. Caio Drazola.
A lot of talent.
Jaime Vazelk, which is incredible, for me surfer. Our next big thing in Portugal. So we're going to try to help Jaime as well. We're always looking at the talent and seeing, who's fit to come on board. Of course, with this comes a lot of negotiation, the parents, the coaches, the managers. So it's big responsibility.
It's an incredible. I mean, the big issue with surfing is obviously that it's the gap between it being a free spirit sport and it being a professional sport where you're being followed by coaches, filmers, nutritionists. Having, a platform for athletes to excel at the highest level is something that I never had. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to find in surfing. That's why your project is with EDP Surf Tomorrow is a pioneer project. These kids are traveling around the world, being exposed to the best coaches, to the best people that can inspire them and turn themselves. And
good advice too,
Yeah, and having you by the side and Zé, that's been through this all your career. I mean, it's incredible. It's really amazing, and that's what you want to leave. That's the mark you want to leave in the surfing, right? Really preparing the next generation and being an inspiration for them to become a better version and achieve the results that you have achieved, and it's incredible.
It's also thinking about the whole spectrum of the sport and the rejuvenating part of the sport. It's like we need to rejuvenate the generation and give them sustainability to keep feeding our big machine or whatever. So if we don't have any surfers on the CT for 5 years in a row, of course we won't have enough or the same amount of investment from outside surf core brands because they're going to lose. You always need to have the hero representing a brand. You can come up with a really nice project, but brands need people. So if you don't have the people, or if you don't sell the dream, there's nothing to work on. It's just a bit.
Two questions to finish up. We've had this conversation. There's so many interesting topics, and your career is so large that it's hard to really touch on everything. But there's two really important subjects I want to talk about. First of all, the surfing industry is going through a really rough stage. It's harder and harder to become professional these days. You've never seen so many people unsponsored. How do you see this? How do you compare your generation, the support you guys had, to the modern day generation, where honestly, we're going through a phase where surfing has never been so popular, yet there has never been a lack of investment in this generation?
Yeah, it's tough, huh? It's you put it really well. The question it's very hard to answer. I think nowadays surf brands are competing with any brand, because the surfer doesn't need to dress, to wear surf brands to be respected. And
a surfer is competing with anyone as well. That's the thing. Yeah. Surf brands are competing with other brands, but surfers are also competing with the influencers, for instance.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of competition out there, and I think the only way to try to avoid this is be fierceful, be hungrier than everybody, because there's still some spots for some of the guys. There's not spots for so many guys anymore. There's different ways of captivating interest and also getting a bit of income yourself. But I don't know, these new ways of being very influential on social media and stuff, it really also deviates your concentration and your energy from the core path that you need to follow. So it's tough, man. I to be honest, I don't have an answer for you.
But just to put in perspective, in your generation, there were probably 30 guys that were making a solid income above 100K a year, let's say, because that's the kind of budget you need to survive on the, paying your expenses, traveling the world, hiring. I mean, if there's 5 guys these days on a European level making above 100K, that's a lot, I mean, it's a really tough market, and it's really tough I feel bad for the younger generations, because in our generation, we did have some support from the get-go, traveling for a while, the base was there, and these days you don't see that anymore. You only see it with projects, like EDP, Surf for Tomorrow, that really have a solid base, and either you're in or you're not,
It's true. And it's kind of like one thing is working against the other, which is for once, you need to be really focused on, your mental, your physique, your boards, this and that to succeed. And on the other side, you need to be sort of like an enterprise. You need to create projects, you need to give ideas to brands, but athletes are not supposed to be thinking this way,
That's the big difference between.
So either you try to create an entourage around yourself that will help you out, creating these projects for you, or you're just like losing too much energy here and there. So it's a tough moment. Definitely, you cannot avoid being present on social network. You cannot. You have to be there, and you have to at least sell a good image from yourself, a clean image. It's always better if you want to have brands backing you up, to have a clean image than to have an arrogant prick, kind of like against society image. It's way more effective to have like a clean image, because you can relate to so many more brands, and that's more opportunity. But then, you have to kind of like don't lose track of what's the way, what's the path, which is being humble, work every day, be hungrier every day, not be happy and content with yourself. So it's very tough to the kids nowadays.
It's tough, and it's challenging to understand how, when, but because the opportunities are out there, maybe even bigger than a couple of years ago. But it's just whether, when these opportunities appear.
And then come guys like you, and that are making a very successful life on just being a surfer, just surfing crazy waves. And, of course you compete on the big world, on the big wave scene, but I wouldn't say that's the growth of, the growth of your income. It's the way you can communicate. And that's the new thing in surfing, is to be able to communicate well. And but it's not for everyone too,
Yeah, I feel
when
like
you're a surfer, you can do good being silent. When you're a communicator, you have to do good. Like, there's only a smaller crop of guys that can communicate and can get people's attention talking. And
yeah, but everyone started some way, and everyone had an opportunity to get somewhere. You know what I feel, and I feel like the chain is broken in that way. I had to fight, but I also was given opportunities to get to the point I am these days, you don't make an omelet without eggs, you understand? And you need some backing, you need support. So I feel like the chain is a little bit broken right now to get to a point where you can actually invest into your career and make stuff happen, So it's sad to see in that way,
But I think there's also the other side of the spectrum, which is surfing being an Olympic sport, and you're starting to get support from the government. And a lot of surfers in Portugal are getting paid monthly by the government because of the Olympic programs, So that's something that, of course, you lost by the core surf side, but you're also gaining different opportunities with the Olympics. There's 4-year cycles, so there's during 4 years you'll get a support, trying to qualify for the Olympics. If you win an Olympic medal, who knows how much you're going to get from your country and the recognition as a sports.
It's a weird market to navigate in. There is a lot of mainstream interest. You see the Porsches, you see the Rolexes, you see the Mercedes, you see the Red Bulls, you see the Monster. All these big companies are in surfing, but it's really hard to be in the right place
and to captivate their interest, because they used to do huge projects, and you can show up to these guys and raise your finger like, I have a really nice project for you, but the guy's going to be looking at your project and say, what the fuck, man, where is my stake here? Where am I going to gain here?
And especially, you have to be really professional when you're approaching those brands, because they're leading, you're competing against the best projects in the world in soccer and so on. But those opportunities are out there. One last question. You've had such an incredible, successful career. You could have milked it for a lot longer in your passion of chasing slabs, big waves. How come you didn't go that way? Because when you finished your career, that's when Nazaré was taking off, and it was your passion. You had a foot in there for a long time, and you could have extended your career for 20 more years or 10 more years. The interest was never there. Why?
Good question. I think I've had my fair share of surf. I really thought when I was retiring that my wife is calling. Boss is calling.
Yeah.
Agora estou aqui a ser filmado, já a acabar, já te ligo. Mas vê as mensagens do grupo, temos que chegar mais tarde. Até já. Sorry. That was, at the end of my career, I thought I was going to do a lot of that. And I looked at you and I remember you kind of approaching myself like, let's do things together. And for once, I think the impact of my kid and the impact of my injuries on myself kind of played a big role. And then, of course, internally within my family circle, I'd say, we came to a conclusion that that I have traveled enough already, and I didn't want to pursue another crazy journey like traveling around the world surfing. In a way, in one way, I'd love to do it because I think it's very natural, and to have the opportunity of going back to surf crazy waves without the risk, without fearing losing sponsors or events or whatever. It was a good thing to have. But on another way, I couldn't even ignore what I was building with my family. So yeah, I came to a conclusion, and then some stupid injuries that were really heavy on my knee came along in 2018, which was snapped ACL. I had 2 surgeries on the same knee, and then I felt like I have no physical condition to surf like Nazaré and stuff like that. It wasn't really like I felt like I wanted to feel that energy, that adrenaline. I still want. I think I'll still go there one day, but I didn't see myself the urge of surfing it for a career. I didn't need that. I was well structured. And then my body kind of rose up and said, "You're not going anywhere." Because
it takes a lot. I mean, like, it's hard to let go, you know, like, I mean, it's closing a chapter of a career must be really tough, you know, because you're addicted to the easy money in some way, like the passionate money, having the support, the fame, the sportive drive, you know, of waking up every morning. So in some way, I respect that of I respect that a lot. Not in some way, I respect that a lot. You know, I think it's very brave to really, you know, turn the page, put a dot on that sentence, and really, you know, go on to a different direction, focusing on family and on your business. I think that's really, really incredible because, I mean, you know, I see a lot of people in Nazaré doing it without passion, just doing it for something, for a career, for, you know, hungry for something that is not theirs, you know? Mm-hmm. And, you know, for you, it would have been a very easy kind of transition because it's natural for you. That's who you are. But I think it's incredible. I think you made a great choice. I think your impact you left in surfing is hard to put into a 2 hours podcast, to be honest. Like, it's the things you have done for us, the gates you have opened. If you wouldn't have been in the picture, my career would have been much, much different. You know, I wouldn't probably have had international inspirations, you know, all these waves we've been surfing and pushing ourselves. We wouldn't have got there. And you really placed Portuguese surf on an international scale like no one before. And I wish we would have another 3 hours of this. But man, I mean, it's incredible to have you here. We've had Rob here. It was incredible to talk to him. It was incredible to talk to you. I think you're such a fundamental piece of this podcast that we're trying to build and interviewing interesting people and them telling them their story. Yeah, is there anything else you wanna express before I leave it up to you? You know, I know you have a busy schedule and family, you know, wife to please.
Oh man, I don't know. Just I wanna thank you. You know, I know you get a lot of heat, like you said. You know, and sometimes I feel myself like thinking, does he really need to do this, Nic? But knowing you and knowing why do you do it as the base, you know, knowing you since you were a really young kid and the love you have for surfing, I always say that he's doing this because he loves it. You know, he wants to live this life like you pretty much you being a sort of like a startup within the sport, I'd say lifestyle, because it's not just the sport. But, you know, being the first guy also doing these type of things in Europe, in probably in the globe, you of course you'll get criticized, you'll get a lot of heat, but also you deserve a big round of applause because you're doing a great job, you know, and you're opening another type of doors. You know, I've spoke about you to some athletes of mine. You know, nowadays you're becoming like a reference of, man, surfing is not just a professional sport. Surfing is way more than that. And you can create a lifestyle and a good career. Look at Nic, you know. So you became a reference of our sport, you know, and you're an ambassador. So I just wanted to thank you as well and give you strength and support to keep going. You have a lot of years to go, you know, you're still young. But people think it's easy to be in your shoes, but I know how hard and how complicated and how much you have to work for. So, parabéns.
Thanks. But yeah, this is the fun part. Sitting down and talking shit with one of my heroes is the fun part. I mean, there's definitely a lot of work that goes behind the scenes that people can't even imagine, and it's 100% driven by passion. When you love what you do, that's when the result comes, and it's 100% driven by passion, because the financials do not match to this game.
But it's when things, when things work, when it's driven by passion, it's when, deep down things are going to work, because you're going to give the extra mile, and you're going to give the extra energy that you need to, and that's when things, become alive.
Yeah.
So wish you a lot of success for this new,
Thank you.
For this new project. You have, the world is yours nowadays, man. Just go for it. Yeah.
Thank you, Saca. That's it. Saca, thank you so much for coming here.
Pleasure.
Same here. I wish you a lot of success with your young crew. You guys building something incredible. And yeah, maybe in a couple months we're gonna get one of you youngsters to come here to talk about his qualification and how he's following your footsteps.
Hopefully.
And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. Tiago Saca Pires, the Portuguese tiger. That's how they call them. It was a pleasure having you, and I'll see you around.
Nick. Thank you, Nick.
See you in Nazaré.
Will.
Muito fixe, meu.
Pá.